Khalid al-Rashid stood at the mirror, barely recognizing the man staring back at him, gone were the tailored suits and perfectly trimmed beard that had been his trademark for decades. In their place stood a man in worn jeans and a faded work shirt, his face obscured by several days' worth of stubble. He ran a hand through his graying hair, marveling at how a change of clothes could transform him from one of the most recognizable faces in the hospitality industry to just another face in the crowd. "Are you sure about this, sir?" his trusted assistant Ahmed asked from across the room. "There must be other ways to investigate the situation at the Sapphire Star." Khalid turned to face Ahmed, his expression resolute. "I've built my empire on the promise of luxury and excellence, Ahmed. If even half of what we've heard about the Sapphire Star is true, it goes against everything I stand for. I need to see it with my own eyes." The Sapphire Star was the crown jewel of Khalid's international hotel chain, a gleaming testament to opulence in the heart of New York City. But recent reports of staff mistreatment, guest complaints, and financial irregularities had tarnished its reputation. Khalid had initially dismissed the rumors as competitors, trying to undermine his success, but as the whispers grew louder, he could no longer ignore them. "I understand, sir," Ahmed replied, though his furrowed brow betrayed his concern. "But posing as a janitor? It's risky. What if someone recognizes you?" Khalid chuckled, gesturing to his transformed appearance. "Look at me, Ahmed. Would you recognize me if you passed me on the street?" When Ahmed hesitated, Khalid continued, "Besides, people see what they expect to see. No one will be looking for Khalid al-Rashid among the cleaning staff." As he gathered his few belongings, a battered duffel bag containing some clothes and basic toiletries, Khalid felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. It had been years since he'd done any manual labor, having worked his way up from humble beginnings to become a titan of industry. Part of him wondered if he was up to the physical demands of the job, but a larger part thrilled at the challenge, at the opportunity to see his creation from a new perspective. "I've arranged everything as you requested," Ahmed said, handing Khalid a small envelope. "Inside you'll find your new ID and employment papers. You're now Ali Hamdan, recently arrived from Lebanon, starting work as a night janitor at the Sapphire Star." Khalid nodded, slipping the envelope into his pocket. "And the apartment?" "A small studio in Queens, as you specified. Nothing fancy, but clean and close to public transportation. The key is in the envelope as well." For a moment, Khalid hesitated. The reality of what he was about to do suddenly felt overwhelming. He was about to step away from his life of luxury, from the power and influence he'd worked so hard to attain, to become invisible. But then he remembered why he was doing this, not just for his business, but for the people who worked tirelessly to make his vision a reality. "Thank you, Ahmed," Khalid said, clasping his friend's shoulder. "I know I can count on you to keep things running smoothly while I'm gone. Remember, no one can know where I really am. As far as the world is concerned, I'm on an extended retreat in the mountains of Switzerland." Ahmed nodded solemnly. "Of course, sir. How long do you think you'll be gone?" Khalid shrugged. "As long as it takes. A week, a month, whatever it takes to get to the bottom of what's happening at the Sapphire Star." With a final glance in the mirror to ensure his disguise was complete, Khalid picked up his duffel bag and headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, Ahmed called out, "Sir, good luck and be careful." Khalid smiled, a glimmer of his old confidence shining through. "I always am, Ahmed. I always am." The subway ride from his modest Queens apartment to Manhattan was an eye-opening experience for Khalid. Squeezed between commuters of all backgrounds, he found himself invisible in a way he'd never been before. No one looked twice at the middle-aged man in work clothes, clutching a battered ID badge. It was both liberating and unsettling. As the train lurched and swayed, Khalid's mind wandered to the task ahead. He'd start his shift at 11 p.m., working through the night when the hotel's glamorous facade gave way to the behind-the-scenes operations that kept it running. He was both eager and apprehensive to see what he would discover. The Sapphire Star loomed before him as he exited the subway, its gleaming blue glass exterior a stark contrast to the gritty reality of the city streets. Khalid had always admired it from afar, seeing it as a symbol of his success. Now as he approached the employee entrance at the back of the building, he saw it with new eyes. A gruff security guard barely glanced at his ID before waving him through. Khalid found himself in a stark utilitarian hallway, a far cry from the opulent lobby he was used to. Following the signs to the maintenance department, he steeled himself for what lay ahead. The maintenance office was a cramped, fluorescent-lit room filled with the smell of industrial cleaners. A heavy-set man with thinning hair looked up from a clipboard as Khalid entered. "You must be the new guy," he grunted. "Ali, right?" Khalid nodded, trying to adopt a meek demeanor. "Yes, sir, Ali Hamdan. I'm here to start my first shift." The man, who introduced himself as Frank, the night supervisor, gave Khalid a once-over. "Ever worked as a janitor before?" "Some experience, yes," Khalid lied, hoping his research would be enough to get him through. Frank seemed unimpressed. "Well, forget whatever you think you know. This is the Sapphire Star. We have standards here." He thrust a mop and bucket into Khalid's hands. "Start with the service corridors on floors 10 through 15. And remember, if you see a guest, you make yourself invisible. Got it?" As Khalid nodded and turned to leave, Frank called out, "And Ali, welcome to the bottom rung of the ladder. Don't expect to climb up anytime soon." The words stung more than Khalid had expected. He'd always prided himself on creating opportunities for his employees, on fostering an environment where hard work was rewarded. Had he been so wrong about the culture he'd built? As he made his way to the service elevator, mop and bucket in hand, Khalid couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to uncover truths about his hotel and himself that he wasn't prepared for. But there was no turning back now. The night stretched before him, full of possibilities and revelations. Little did Khalid know that this night would be the first of many that would challenge everything he thought he knew about his empire, his employees, and the true meaning of success. As the elevator doors closed, taking him up to the world he once thought he understood, Khalid al-Rashid, disguised as Ali Hamdan, began a journey that would change his life forever. As Khalid pushed his mop along the dimly lit service corridor of the 10th floor, the reality of his situation began to sink in. His arms ached from the repetitive motion, and his back protested against the unfamiliar strain. He had always prided himself on staying fit, but this was a different kind of physical demand, relentless and mundane. The corridor seemed endless, stretching out before him in a monotonous expanse of beige walls and industrial carpeting. Khalid found his mind wandering, imagining the guests sleeping peacefully behind the doors he passed. They were blissfully unaware of the army of workers that toiled through the night to maintain the illusion of effortless luxury. As he rounded a corner, Khalid nearly collided with a petite woman in a housekeeper's uniform. She was pushing a heavily laden cart, her face etched with exhaustion. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Khalid stammered, reverting to his native Arabic in his surprise. The woman's eyes widened slightly at the familiar language. "La bas," she replied, then quickly switched to English. "It's okay, you're new here, aren't you?" Khalid nodded, remembering his cover story. "Yes, I'm Ali. It's my first night." A tired smile flickered across her face. "I'm Amira. Welcome to the night shift at the Sapphire Star. Although," she added with a wry chuckle, "there's not much star-like about it from this side, is there?" Before Khalid could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Amira, what are you doing chatting? Those rooms won't clean themselves." A tall, imposing man in an impeccably tailored suit strode towards them. His face was set in a permanent scowl, his eyes cold as they surveyed the scene. "Mr. Blackwood," Amira said, her voice suddenly small. I don't care what you are just doing," Blackwood snapped. "We have VIPs checking in early tomorrow, and I want this floor spotless. Get back to work." Amira ducked her head and hurried away, pushing her cart with renewed urgency. Blackwood then turned his attention to Khalid, his lip curling in disdain. "And you must be the new janitor. Ali, was it?" Khalid nodded, fighting the urge to stand up straight and meet Blackwood's gaze as an equal. "Yes, sir. Ali Hamdan." Blackwood's eyes narrowed. "Well, Ali Hamdan, let me make something very clear. At the Sapphire Star, we have a certain standard of excellence to maintain. I don't care if you're scrubbing toilets or changing light bulbs. Everything you do reflects on this hotel, on me, and ultimately on Mr. Al-Rashid himself. Do you understand? The irony of the situation was not lost on Khalid, but he kept his face carefully neutral. Yes, Mr. Blackwood, I understand. Good, Blackwood said, though his tone suggested he was far from convinced. Now get back to work. And remember, if I see you slacking off or fraternizing with the other staff again, you'll be out on the street faster than you can say minimum wage. Are we clear? Without waiting for a response, Blackwood turned on his heel and strode away, leaving Khalid staring after him in disbelief. In all his years running the hotel chain, Khalid had never imagined that any of his employees would be spoken to with such contempt, let alone by a member of management. As he resumed his mopping, Khalid's mind raced. Was this how things were always run at the Sapphire Star? Had he been so removed from the day-to-day operations that he'd allowed this toxic culture to flourish under his nose? And who was this Blackwood character? Khalid couldn't recall ever hiring or promoting someone with that name to such a high-level position. The rest of Khalid's shift passed in a blur of aching muscles and mounting questions. He observed his fellow night staff, the housekeepers rushing to prepare rooms, the kitchen workers prepping for breakfast, the security guards patrolling the halls. Everyone seemed to operate under a cloud of tension, their eyes constantly darting around as if expecting Blackwood or another manager to appear at any moment. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the windows, Khalid made his way back to the maintenance office to clock out. His body was screaming for rest, but his mind was more alert than ever. He had only scratched the surface, but already he could see that the problems at the Sapphire Star ran far deeper than he had imagined. Just as he was about to leave, Khalid spotted Amira heading towards the employee exit. On impulse, he hurried to catch up with her. "Amira," he called softly. "Are you all right? That man, Blackwood, is he always like that?" Amira glanced around nervously before responding. "Mr. Blackwood is strict, but it's not so bad. We're lucky to have jobs here, you know. The pay is, well, it's better than nothing." Khalid frowned. He knew for a fact that the Sapphire Star's pay rates were supposed to be well above industry standard. Something wasn't adding up. "Listen," Amira continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you want to last here, keep your head down and don't ask too many questions. Mr. Blackwood doesn't like troublemakers." With that, she hurried away, leaving Khalid standing alone, in the grey light of early morning. As he made his way out onto the bustling New York street, blending in with the crowd of early commuters, Khalid felt a sense of resolve solidifying within him. He had come to the Sapphire Star expecting to find some minor issues to address. Instead, he had stumbled upon what appeared to be a systemic problem that threatened the very core of what he had built his empire on: respect, excellence, and opportunity for all. As Khalid boarded the subway back to his small Queens apartment, his mind was already formulating a plan. He would need to dig deeper to understand the full scope of what was happening at his flagship hotel. And somehow he would need to find a way to fix it, all while maintaining his cover as Ali, the unassuming janitor. Little did Khalid know that his journey was only beginning, and that the challenges ahead would test not only his resolve as a businessman, but also his character as a human being. As the subway car lurched forward, carrying him away from the glittering facade of the Sapphire Star, Khalid al-Rashid steeled himself for the battle ahead, a battle for the soul of his life's work, and perhaps for his own redemption. The next few days passed in a blur of exhaustion and revelation for Khalid. Each shift at the Sapphire Star peeled back another layer of the hotel's facade, revealing a reality that was far from the vision he had for his flagship property. As Ali the janitor, Khalid found himself privy to conversations and situations that would have been carefully hidden from Khalid the millionaire owner. On his third night, while scrubbing the kitchen floors after hours, Khalid overheard a heated argument between two of the sous chefs. "I'm telling you, Marco, we can't keep serving that fish. It's not fresh." The first chef, a young woman with vibrant red hair, was gesticulating wildly with a spatula. Marco, an older man with a salt and pepper beard, sighed heavily. "What choice do we have, Sophie? Mr. Blackwood insists we cut costs wherever we can. If we throw out that fish, it's coming out of our paychecks. Sophie's face fell. But what? About food safety? What about our reputation? Our reputation, Marco scoffed. The only reputation that matters around here is Mr. Blackwood's. As long as the books look good and the VIPs are happy, nothing else matters. Khalid's stomach churned, and not just from the strong scent of cleaning chemicals. He had always prided himself on the quality of cuisine at his hotels. The idea that corners were being cut, potentially risking guests' health, was abhorrent to him. As the days wore on, Khalid found more and more evidence of mismanagement and corner cutting. The once luxurious furnishings were showing signs of wear and tear, with repairs being postponed or done shoddily to save money. The staff, once known for their impeccable service, now seemed demoralized and fearful. But it was Amira, the housekeeper, he had met on his first night, who truly opened Khalid's eyes to the human cost of the Sapphire Star's decline. He ran into her again while cleaning the staff break room, finding her slumped in a chair, her face in her hands. "Amira," he asked, gently, "are you all right?" She looked up, startled, then relaxed slightly when she saw it was him. "Oh, Ali, it's you." She wiped quickly at her eyes. "I'm fine. It's been a long day." Khalid sat down beside her, setting his mop aside. "Want to talk about it?" Amira hesitated, then seemed to deflate. "It's my son, Zain. He's sick. Has been for a few days now. I can't afford to take time off to care for him, but I can't afford the doctor bills either. I don't know what to do." Khalid frowned. He knew the hotel's health insurance was supposed to be comprehensive, but surely the hotel's insurance— Amira let out a bitter laugh. "Insurance? Mr. Blackwood found a loophole. Most of us are classified as part-time now, even though we work full hours. No benefits, no security. We're trapped, Ali. We can't afford to leave, but we can barely afford to stay." The injustice of it all made Khalid's blood boil. This was not the company he had built, not the values he had instilled, but he forced himself to remain calm, to stay in character. "I'm so sorry, Amira. Is there anything I can do to help?" She shook her head, managing a weak smile. "You're kind to offer, Ali, but you're in the same boat as the rest of us. We just have to keep our heads down and hope things get better." As Amira left to return to her duties, Khalid sat there, his mind reeling. He had come to the Sapphire Star to investigate rumors of mismanagement, but what he was uncovering was far worse than he had imagined. This wasn't just about cutting corners or poor service. This was about the lives and livelihoods of the people who made the hotel run. Over the next few shifts, Khalid paid closer attention to his co-workers, noting the dark circles under their eyes, the whispered complaints, the nervous glances whenever Mr. Blackwood appeared. He saw how the staff pulled together, covering for each other when someone was too exhausted to function, sharing meager tips, offering words of encouragement. It was during one of these moments of camaraderie that Khalid met Carlos, a maintenance worker with a quick wit and an observant eye. "You're not like the others, are you, Ali?" Carlos asked one night as they were changing light bulbs in the grand ballroom. Khalid nearly dropped the bulb he was holding. "What do you mean?" Carlos shrugged. "You ask a lot of questions. You notice things, and sometimes the way you carry yourself, it's like you're not used to this kind of work." For a moment, Khalid panicked, wondering if his cover had been blown, but Carlos just grinned and clapped him on the shoulder. "Relax, man. We've all got our secrets. I'm just glad to have someone else around who gives a damn about this place and the people in it." As they worked, Carlos filled Khalid in on more of the hotel's recent history. How things had started to change about a year ago, when Mr. Blackwood had been brought in as the new general manager. How long-time employees had been pushed out, replaced by cheaper labor. How the once proud staff had been reduced to fearful, overworked shadows of their former selves. "But why hasn't anyone complained?" Khalid asked, struggling to understand how things had gotten so bad without his knowledge. "Surely the owner—" Carlos snorted. "The owner? You mean the great Khalid al-Rashid?" Man's probably sipping champagne on his yacht somewhere, counting his millions. You think he cares about what happens to people like us? The words hit Khalid like a physical blow. Is that really how his employees saw him? As some distant, uncaring figure? He had always thought of himself as a fair and generous employer, but now he was forced to confront a very different reality. As his shift ended, Khalid made his way back to his small apartment. His mind was in turmoil. He had come to the Sapphire Star looking for answers, but instead he had found more questions. How had things gone so wrong? How could he fix it? And most importantly, how could he regain the trust of the people who worked so hard to make his success possible? Lying on his cramped bed, staring at the cracked ceiling, Khalid al-Rashid made a silent vow. He would not rest until he had uncovered the full truth of what was happening at the Sapphire Star. And when he did, he would make it right, not just for the sake of his business, but for Amira, Carlos, and every other employee who had been let down by his negligence. As sleep finally claimed him, Khalid's last thought was of Amira's son, Zain. Tomorrow, he decided, he would find a way to help, not as Khalid the millionaire, but as Ali the janitor. It would be the first step on a long road to redemption. As the sun rose over the New York skyline, Khalid found himself not in his luxurious penthouse, but in a small, dingy clinic in Queens. He had managed to convince Amira to let him accompany her and Zain to a doctor's appointment, insisting that no one should face such challenges alone. The waiting room was crowded, filled with the low murmur of worried conversations and the occasional cough. Zain, a thin boy of about 7, leaned against his mother, his face pale and drawn. Amira's eyes were red-rimmed from lack of sleep, but she managed a grateful smile when Khalid handed her a cup of lukewarm vending machine coffee. "You didn't have to come, Ali," she said softly. "You must be exhausted after your shift." Khalid shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant. "What are friends for? Besides, I couldn't sleep anyway. Might as well make myself useful." As they waited, Khalid's mind raced. He was acutely aware of the irony of the situation. Here he was, a man who could buy this entire clinic without blinking an eye, pretending to be as helpless as everyone else in the room. The urge to reveal his true identity, to sweep in and solve all of Amira's problems with a wave of his platinum credit card, was almost overwhelming. But he knew that would solve nothing in the long run. The systemic issues at the Sapphire Star would remain, affecting countless other employees. When Zain's name was finally called, Khalid waited outside the examination room, pacing nervously. After what seemed like an eternity, Amira emerged, clutching a prescription and looking relieved. "It's just a bad case of bronchitis," she explained. "The doctor says he'll be fine with some rest and antibiotics." Khalid felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "That's great news, Amira. Let's get that prescription filled right away." As they stood at the pharmacy counter, however, Khalid saw Amira's face fall as she looked at the price of the medication. Without hesitation, he pulled out his wallet. "Let me help," he said quietly. "Please, you can pay me back when you're able." Amira's eyes filled with tears. "Ali, I can't. You're struggling too, I know you are." Khalid placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We have to look out for each other, right? That's what you've all taught me since I started at the Sapphire Star. Please, let me do this for Zain." After a moment's hesitation, Amira nodded, overwhelmed by gratitude. As they left the clinic, Zain's small hand in his mother's, and the vital medication secured, Khalid felt a surge of emotion he hadn't experienced in years. This, he realized, was what truly mattered. Not the bottom line or the luxury suites, but the real human impact he could have on people's lives. The experience at the clinic had solidified Khalid's resolve. He needed to dig deeper to understand the full extent of the problems at the Sapphire Star. And for that, he realized, he would need help. That night, as he mopped the hotel's vast lobby under the watchful eye of the night manager, Khalid made his move. He approached Carlos, who was tinkering with a faulty elevator panel. "Carlos," he said in a low voice, "can we talk somewhere private?" Carlos raised an eyebrow but nodded, leading Khalid to a secluded maintenance closet. Once inside, Khalid took a deep breath. "I need your help," he began. "I know you've noticed that I'm different. The truth is, I'm here to investigate what's really going on at this hotel. The mistreatment of staff, the cost-cutting, all of it. But I can't do it alone. Carlos studied him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Who are you really, Ali? Or whatever your name is? Khalid hesitated. He couldn't reveal everything. Not yet. I'm someone who has the power to make changes, if I can get the evidence I need. But I need someone on the inside, someone the staff trusts. Will you help me? For a tense moment, Khalid thought Carlos might refuse, might even expose him. But then a slow smile spread across the maintenance man's face. I knew there was something different about you, Carlos chuckled. All right, mystery man, I'm in. But on one condition, whatever we uncover, whatever changes we make, it has to benefit everyone. Not just the bigwigs, but people like Amira, like the kitchen staff, like me. Deal. Khalid extended his hand, relief washing over him. Deal. Over the next few weeks, Khalid and Carlos worked tirelessly, gathering evidence of the mismanagement and mistreatment plaguing the Sapphire Star. They documented everything, from the substandard food being served in the kitchens to the dangerous corners being cut in maintenance, from the unfair labor practices to the verbal abuse staff endured from Mr. Blackwood and his cronies. Their covert operation wasn't without close calls. One night, as Khalid was photographing some questionable entries in the hotel's financial records, he nearly ran into Mr. Blackwood himself. Only Carlos's quick thinking, loudly dropping a bucket of cleaning supplies as a distraction, saved Khalid from discovery. As they accumulated more and more damning evidence, Khalid felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, he was appalled at the extent of the problems, at how far his once proud flagship had fallen. On the other, he felt a growing sense of purpose, of connection to the people around him. For the first time in years, he wasn't just a businessman, but part of a community. This sense of belonging was driven home one evening, when Amira invited both Khalid and Carlos to her tiny apartment for dinner. It was a simple meal, just some homemade falafel and rice. But as Khalid sat there laughing with Carlos and watching Zain, now recovered, proudly show off his school artwork, he felt a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. As the night wore on and Zain was put to bed, the conversation turned more serious. Amira, her voice low, began to open up about her struggles, the constant fear of losing her job, the challenge of raising Zain alone, the dreams she'd had to put aside. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it, she admitted, her eyes glistening. If I should just leave, try to find something else. But where would we go? What would we do? Khalid reached out, clasping her hand. Things will get better, Amira. I promise you, we're going to make them better. As he said the words, Khalid knew he meant them with every fiber of his being. He had come to the Sapphire Star to save his business, but now he realized his mission was far greater. He wasn't just fighting for a hotel. He was fighting for Amira, for Zain, for Carlos, for every person who had put their trust in the promise of the Sapphire Star. As he left Amira's apartment that night, the cool night air filling his lungs, Khalid felt a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in years. The path ahead would be challenging, fraught with obstacles and risks. But for the first time since, he'd embarked on this undercover journey. He knew without a doubt that he was doing the right thing. With renewed determination, Khalid headed back to his small apartment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new discoveries. But whatever came, he was ready to face it. Not as Khalid al-Rashid, the distant millionaire, but as Ali, the janitor, who had found his true purpose in the most unexpected of places. As weeks turned into months, Khalid found himself fully immersed in his dual life. By day, he was Ali the janitor, mopping floors and changing light bulbs. By night, he and Carlos worked tirelessly to uncover the full extent of the corruption. At the Sapphire Star, the more they discovered, the more alarming the situation became. One particularly tense evening, Khalid and Carlos were huddled in a supply closet, poring over documents they'd managed to copy from Mr. Blackwood's office. "This is worse than we thought," Carlos whispered, his face pale in the dim light. "Look at these numbers. They're not just cutting corners, they're cooking the books, embezzlement, kickbacks. This goes way beyond mismanagement." Khalid felt a cold knot form in his stomach. He had suspected financial irregularities, but this level of fraud was beyond anything he had imagined. "We need to be careful, Carlos. This kind of information, It could be dangerous if the wrong people found out we have it. Carlos nodded grimly. I know, but we can't back down now. Too many people are counting on us. As they continued to gather evidence, Khalid found himself growing closer to his co-workers. He shared meals with Amira and Zain, helped other staff, members with small repairs in their homes, and even organized a secret birthday celebration for one of the older housekeepers. With each passing day, he felt less like an undercover boss and more like a member of a tight-knit community. But the facade of normalcy was shattered one night when Khalid overheard a conversation that chilled him to the bone. He was cleaning near Mr. Blackwood's office when he heard raised voices inside. You promised me those inspectors would look the other way. It was Mr. Blackwood, his voice tight with anger. I did what I could, another voice replied, one Khalid didn't recognize. But some of these issues, they're too big to ignore. The structural problems in the East Wing, the mold in the air ducts, if we don't address them soon, people could get hurt. Mr. Blackwood's response was cold. People getting hurt is not my concern. My job is to keep this hotel profitable by any means necessary. If a few guests or staff members have to suffer for the greater good, so be it. Khalid had to stifle a gasp. This was beyond mere negligence. It was a callous disregard for human life. He knew then that he couldn't wait any longer. It was time to act. The next day, Khalid called an emergency meeting with Carlos and Amira in his tiny apartment. As they sat around his cramped kitchen table, he took a deep breath. I haven't been entirely honest with you, he began. Carlos and Amira exchanged worried glances. My name isn't Ali, it's Khalid. Khalid al-Rashid. The room fell silent. Amira's eyes widened in shock, while Carlos let out a low whistle. I knew you were hiding something, Carlos said, but this... Why? Why would you do all this? Khalid explained everything. The reports of problems at the hotel, his decision to go undercover, the shocking truths he had uncovered. As he spoke, he could see the mix of emotions playing across his friends' faces, surprise, anger, and finally, understanding. I'm sorry for deceiving you, Khalid finished, but I need your help now more than ever. What's happening at the Sapphire Star? It's worse than any of us imagined, and I can't fix it alone. For a long moment, neither Carlos nor Amira spoke. Then, to Khalid's surprise, Amira reached out and took his hand. You didn't have to do any of this, she said softly. You could have stayed in your penthouse, ignored everything. But you chose to see, to understand. That means something. Carlos nodded slowly. She's right. You're not the man we thought you were, Khalid. You're better. So yeah, we're with you, whatever it takes. Relief washed over Khalid. He squeezed Amira's hand, feeling a surge of affection for these two people who had become so important to him. Thank you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Now, let's figure out how we're going to save our hotel. Over the next few days, the trio worked feverishly to compile all the evidence they had gathered. They created a comprehensive report detailing every instance of fraud, neglect, and abuse they had uncovered. Khalid knew that once this information came to light, there would be no going back. The night before they planned to take action, Khalid found himself unable to sleep. He stood at the window of his small apartment, looking out at the glittering lights of the city. Somewhere out there was the Sapphire Star, the dream he had built, now tarnished by greed and corruption. But as he thought about Amira's resilience, Carlos's loyalty, and all the hard-working staff he had come to know and respect, Khalid felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Sapphire Star wasn't just a building or a business, it was a community, and he was going to fight for it with everything he had. As the first light of dawn broke over the city, Khalid made a silent vow. No matter what happened next, no matter the personal cost, he would make things right. The Sapphire Star would shine again, not just as a beacon of luxury, but as a symbol of fairness, respect, and true hospitality. With that resolve firmly in his heart, Khalid prepared himself for the confrontation that lay ahead. The time for hiding was over. Today, Khalid al-Rashid would reclaim his hotel and, in doing so, redefine what it meant to be a leader. The morning dawned crisp and clear. a stark contrast to the storm brewing within the walls of the Sapphire Star. Khalid, dressed once again in the impeccable suit of a hotel magnate, strode through the gleaming lobby, flanked by Carlos and Amira. The staff they passed did double takes, their eyes widening as they recognized the man they had known as Ali the janitor. Whispers followed in their wake as they made their way to the executive offices on the top floor. Khalid's heart raced, but his resolve was unwavering. This was the moment of truth. As they approached Mr. Blackwood's office, his secretary jumped to her feet, her face a mask of confusion. "Mr. Al-Rashid, we weren't expecting you. Mr. Blackwood is in a meeting and—" "This can't wait," Khalid said firmly, pushing past her and throwing open the office door. Inside, Mr. Blackwood was indeed in a meeting with several well-dressed individuals Khalid recognized as members of the hotel's board of directors. All heads turned as Khalid entered, expressions ranging from surprise to alarm. "Khalid!" Mr. Blackwood exclaimed, recovering quickly. "What an unexpected pleasure. We were just discussing—" "Save it, Blackwood," Khalid interrupted, his voice cold. "Your reign of mismanagement and corruption ends today." The room fell silent. Mr. Blackwood's face drained of color, while the board members exchanged uneasy glances. "I don't know what you're talking about," Mr. Blackwood stammered. "Everything here is run exactly as I instructed," Khalid finished for him. "Is that what you were going to say? Because I can assure you, nothing that has happened in this hotel over the past year has been with my knowledge or approval." With that, Khalid nodded to Carlos, who stepped forward and placed a thick folder on the conference table. "This contains detailed evidence of every illegal and unethical practice that has been occurring under Mr. Blackwood's management," Khalid explained. "Financial fraud, labor law violations, safety code breaches, it's all there." The board members leaned forward, their faces growing more concerned as they flipped through the pages. Mr. Blackwood, meanwhile, had gone from pale to red, his composure crumbling. "You can't prove any of this," he sputtered. "It's all lies, fabrications." "Actually," Amira spoke up, her voice steady despite her obvious nervousness, "we can prove it, because we've lived it. Every day we've watched you exploit and endanger the people who make this hotel run." One of the board members, an older woman with steely gray hair, looked up from the documents. "Mr. Al-Rashid, these allegations are extremely serious. If even half of this is true—" "It's all true," Khalid assured her, "and I take full responsibility for allowing it to happen under my watch. I became too removed from the day-to-day operations, and I failed the people who trusted me. But that ends now." He turned to Mr. Blackwood, who was now visibly sweating. "You're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the premises, and I can assure you legal action will follow." As if on cue, 2 security guards entered the room. Mr. Blackwood looked around wildly, seeking any ally, but found none. With a final venomous glare at Khalid, he allowed himself to be led out. The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Finally, another board member spoke up. "Mr. Al-Rashid, while we appreciate your unconventional approach to uncovering these issues, this situation leaves us in a very difficult position. The reputation of the Sapphire Star will be restored," Khalid finished firmly. "Not through cover-ups or quick fixes, but through genuine change. Starting today, we're going to rebuild this hotel from the ground up, not just physically, but ethically." He outlined his plan: immediate safety upgrades, fair labor practices, increased transparency, and a renewed commitment to both guest satisfaction and employee well-being. As he spoke, Khalid could see the board members' expressions shifting from skepticism to cautious optimism. "It won't be easy," Khalid concluded. "We have a lot of trust to rebuild, both with our staff and our guests, but I believe in the Sapphire Star, and more importantly, I believe in the people who make it shine." He glanced at Carlos and Amira, feeling a surge of gratitude for their unwavering support. "I've seen firsthand the dedication and resilience of our staff. They deserve better, and we're going to give it to them." The grey-haired board member nodded slowly. "It's an ambitious plan, Khalid, but after what we've seen here today, I think it's exactly what we need. You have our support." As the meeting adjourned and plans were set in motion, Khalid felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in months he felt truly hopeful about the future of the Sapphire Star. Later that evening, as the sun set over the New York skyline, Khalid stood in the hotel lobby. Staff members gathered around, their faces a mix of curiosity and cautious hope. Taking a deep breath, Khalid began to address them. "Many of you know me as Ali, the night janitor," he said, smiling as murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd. "Others know me as Khalid al-Rashid, the owner of this hotel. The truth is, I'm both of those people, and my experiences over these past months have taught me more than I ever could have imagined." He went on to explain the changes that were coming. Better working conditions, fair pay, opportunities for advancement. But more than that, he spoke of his vision for the Sapphire Star as a place where every employee felt valued and every guest experienced true hospitality. "We have a long way to go," Khalid concluded, "but I promise you this. From this day forward, we're in this together. The Sapphire Star isn't just a building or a business, it's all of us, and together we're going to make it shine brighter than ever before." As applause broke out, Khalid caught Amira's eye in the crowd. She was smiling, tears glistening in her eyes. Beside her, Carlos gave a thumbs up. In that moment, Khalid knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he wasn't facing them alone. He had found something far more valuable than business success. He had found a true family at the Sapphire Star. In the weeks following the dramatic confrontation, the Sapphire Star buzzed with activity. Khalid, true to his word, threw himself into the monumental task of reforming the hotel from top to bottom. The changes were swift and sweeping, touching every aspect of the hotel's operations. One of Khalid's first acts was to promote Carlos to head of maintenance and Amira to assistant manager of housekeeping. Their intimate knowledge of the hotel's inner workings and their unwavering integrity made them invaluable assets in the rebuilding process. "I still can't believe it," Amira said one afternoon as she and Khalid toured the newly renovated employee break room. "A month ago, I was worried about paying for Zane's medicine. Now," Khalid smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder, "now you're helping to run one of the most prestigious hotels in New York. And you've earned every bit of it, Amira." The physical renovations were extensive. Khalid spared no expense in addressing the safety concerns that had been neglected for so long. The East Wing was completely overhauled, with structural reinforcements and state-of-the-art safety systems installed throughout the building. But the real transformation was happening among the staff. With the cloud of fear and resentment lifted, employees began to take pride in their work again. The change was palpable. Smiles were more genuine, service more attentive, and a sense of camaraderie blossomed throughout the ranks. Khalid made it a point to remain hands-on in the day-to-day operations. He could often be found chatting with bellhops, assisting housekeepers, or even jumping in to help in the kitchen during busy periods. His willingness to roll up his sleeves and work alongside his employees did more to boost morale than any policy change ever could. One evening, as Khalid was helping to set up for a gala in the grand ballroom, he overheard two young servers talking. "Can you believe the boss is actually helping us move tables?" one whispered. The other nodded, grinning. "I heard he even worked as a janitor for months just to understand what we go through. That's dedication." Khalid smiled to himself, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. This was what he had been working for, not just a profitable business, but a community where every member felt valued and heard. Of course, the path wasn't always smooth. There were skeptics both within and outside the hotel who doubted the sustainability of Khalid's new approach. Some longtime guests, accustomed to the old way of doing things, grumbled about changes to their routines, but for every complaint, there were dozens of positive responses. Guests began to notice the renewed energy and genuine warmth of the staff. Reviews praised not just the luxurious accommodations, but the authentic hospitality that seemed to permeate every interaction. One particularly challenging moment came when a prominent business magazine requested an interview with Khalid about the hotel's turnaround. As he sat down with the journalist, Khalid felt a momentary pang of anxiety. How could he explain the profound personal transformation he had undergone without sounding trite or self-aggrandizing? In the end, he decided on honesty. He spoke candidly about his time undercover, about the eye-opening experiences that had changed his perspective on leadership and success. "I thought I knew what luxury meant," Khalid told the journalist. "I thought it was about thread counts and champagne and catering to every whim. But I've learned that true luxury, true hospitality, comes from people who feel valued and empowered to care for others. That's what we're building here at the Sapphire Star." The article, when published, was a sensation. It painted a picture of a business leader who had taken an unprecedented step to understand and improve his company from the ground up. Requests for bookings surged, and other hotel chains began to take notice of the Sapphire Star's new approach. But for Khalid, the real measure of success came in smaller moments. It was in the way Zain's face lit up when he visited his mother at work, proud to see her in her new role. It was in the laughter that echoed from the employee cafeteria during lunch breaks. It was in the heartfelt thank you notes from guests who had experienced something special during their stay. One evening, about 6 months after the changes had begun, Khalid found himself on the rooftop terrace of the Sapphire Star. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. He leaned on the railing, looking out over the bustling streets below. Carlos joined him, handing him a cup of coffee. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Khalid nodded, sipping the coffee gratefully. "It never gets old." They stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching the city transition from day to night. "You know," Carlos said finally, "when you first revealed who you really were, I thought this was all too good to be true. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop." Khalid turned to his friend, raising an eyebrow. "And now?" Carlos grinned, clapping Khalid on the back. Now I think we're just getting started. The best is yet to come for the Sapphire Star." As the last rays of sunlight glinted off the windows of neighboring skyscrapers, Khalid felt a profound sense of peace. He had embarked on this journey to save his hotel, but in the process he had found something far more valuable: a renewed sense of purpose, a community to belong to, and a deeper understanding of what truly mattered in life. The Sapphire Star was no longer just a jewel in his business crown. It had become a beacon of what was possible when people came together with a shared vision and mutual respect. And as the city lights began to twinkle in the gathering dusk, Khalid knew that the brightest days for the Sapphire Star, and for himself, were still ahead. As the months rolled by, the Sapphire Star's transformation continued to evolve. The hotel had become a model of ethical business practices and employee empowerment in the hospitality industry. However, with success came new challenges that Khalid and his team had to navigate carefully. One crisp autumn morning, Khalid sat in a meeting with his newly formed employee council, a diverse group representing every department of the hotel. The atmosphere was lively as they discussed upcoming initiatives and addressed concerns. "The new training program has been a huge hit," reported Maria, a front desk supervisor. "We've seen a marked improvement in customer satisfaction scores." Khalid nodded, pleased. "That's excellent news. How are the staff responding to the additional training hours?" There was some initial grumbling, Carlos chimed in, but once people saw the benefits both in their job performance and opportunities for advancement, the enthusiasm picked up. As the meeting continued, Amira raised a point that had been on many minds. "Khalid, with all the positive press we've been getting, we're seeing a surge in bookings. That's great, but some of the staff are concerned about maintaining our new standards with the increased workload." It was a valid concern, and one that Khalid had been grappling with himself. The Sapphire Star's reputation had soared, attracting not just more guests but a different caliber of visitor, those drawn by the hotel's commitment to ethical luxury. "You're right, Amira," Khalid acknowledged. "We need to find a balance between growth and maintaining the quality of experience for both our guests and our staff. I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear your thoughts." The ensuing discussion was vibrant, with suggestions ranging from hiring additional staff to implementing more efficient scheduling systems. Khalid marveled at the engagement and creativity of his team. This, he realized, was the true power of creating an environment where every voice was valued. As the meeting concluded, Khalid felt a surge of pride. The Sapphire Star was no longer just his vision. It had become a shared dream, nurtured by the passion and dedication of every employee. However, not all challenges were as easily addressed. One afternoon, Khalid received a call from his legal team, a group of shareholders concerned about the initial dip in profits following the hotel's restructuring were threatening legal action. They claim you're neglecting your fiduciary duty by prioritizing employee welfare over maximizing shareholder returns, the lead lawyer explained. Khalid sighed, feeling the weight of his decisions. He had anticipated some pushback, but the threat of legal action was more serious than he'd expected. "Set up a meeting," he instructed. "I want to address their concerns directly." The shareholder meeting was tense. Khalid faced a room full of skeptical faces, many of whom had been with the company since its early days. "Gentlemen, ladies," Khalid began, his voice steady, "I understand your concerns. You've invested in this company, and you expect returns, but I ask you to consider a broader perspective." He proceeded to lay out the long-term vision for the Sapphire Star, how investing in employees and ethical practices was not just morally right, but financially sound. He presented data showing the increase in repeat bookings, the surge in positive reviews, and the growing interest from a new market of ethically minded travelers. "Our profits dipped initially, yes," Khalid admitted, "but they're already rebounding, and projections show we'll surpass our previous peak within the year. More importantly, we're building a sustainable model that will ensure the Sapphire Star's success for years to come." By the end of the meeting, while not everyone was fully convinced, the immediate threat of legal action had been averted. Khalid had bought himself more time to prove that ethical business could also be good business. As he left the meeting, exhausted but relieved, Khalid ran into a mirror in the hallway. She took one look at his face and said, "Tough day. Come on, I know just what you need." She led him to the hotel's rooftop garden, a new addition that had quickly become a favorite spot for staff and guests alike. As they sat on a bench surrounded by fragrant herbs and colorful flowers, Amira handed him a cup of mint tea. "Sometimes," she said softly, "we all need a reminder of why we're doing this." Khalid sipped the tea, feeling some of the tension leave his body. "So you're right, as usual," he chuckled. "How do you always know?" Amira smiled. "Because I've been where you are, torn between what's easy and what's right. But then I look around at what we've built here, at how much has changed for all of us, and I know it's worth every struggle." As they sat in companionable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues, Khalid felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, there would be challenges. Yes, there would be those who doubted and questioned. But the Sapphire Star was more than just a hotel now. It was a beacon of what was possible when business was conducted with heart and integrity. The path forward wouldn't always be smooth, but Khalid knew he wasn't walking it alone. He had a team, no, a family beside him, each member committed to the shared vision of what the Sapphire Star could be. As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Khalid made a silent vow. No matter what obstacles lay ahead, he would stay true to the lessons he had learned. The Sapphire Star would continue to shine, not just as a luxury hotel, but as a shining example of compassionate capitalism in action. With renewed determination, Khalid stood, ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. The journey of transformation was far from over, but with every step the Sapphire Star and all who called it home grew stronger together. As the Sapphire Star approached the one-year anniversary of its dramatic transformation, the atmosphere in the hotel was electric with anticipation. Khalid had announced a week-long celebration, not just for the guests, but for the staff who had made the turnaround possible. The event was to culminate in a gala that would bring together employees, guests, industry leaders, and even some of the once skeptical shareholders. It was a bold move, putting the hotel's new ethos on full display for the world to see. In the days leading up to the celebration, Khalid found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought them to this point. He wandered the halls of the hotel, taking in the subtle but significant changes that had occurred over the past year. The lobby, once cold and imposing, now exuded a warm welcome. Staff members greeted guests by name, their smiles genuine and bright. In the restaurants, locally sourced ingredients and fair trade products had replaced generic luxury items, telling a story of sustainability and community connection with every meal. But it was in the back-of-house areas where the most profound changes were evident. The once dingy break rooms now rivaled the guest areas in comfort and style. Bulletin boards showcased employee achievements and community initiatives. The air was filled with laughter and camaraderie. As Khalid passed the hotel's new daycare center, he paused to watch Zain and other employees' children engaged in a lively art project. The creation of the daycare had been Amira's idea, born from her own struggles as a working parent. It had quickly become one of the most beloved additions to the hotel. "They're making decorations for the gala," a voice said beside him. Khalid turned to see Ms. Rodriguez, the daycare director, smiling proudly. They wanted to contribute to the celebration. Khalid felt a lump form in his throat. "It's perfect," he managed. "Please make sure their artwork gets a place of honor at the event." As the big day approached, the entire hotel was abuzz with activity. Every department was involved in the preparations, each bringing their unique skills and perspectives to the table. It was a far cry from the top-down planning of past events, and the result was shaping up to be truly spectacular. The morning of the gala, Khalid found himself once again on the rooftop terrace, seeking a moment of quiet before the whirlwind of the day began. To his surprise, he found Carlos already there, nursing a cup of coffee. "Couldn't sleep either?" Carlos asked, offering Khalid a steaming mug. Khalid accepted gratefully, leaning against the railing next to his friend. "Too much on my mind. I suppose. A year ago, could you have imagined we'd be here?" Carlos chuckled. "A year ago, I was planning my escape from this place. Now, I can't imagine being anywhere else." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city come to life below them. Finally, Carlos spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "You know, when you first revealed who you were, I thought it was too good to be true. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop." Khalid turned to him, curious. "And now?" "Now," Carlos grinned. "Now I think we're just getting started. What we've built here, it's bigger than just one hotel, isn't it?" Khalid nodded slowly, a vision forming in his mind. "You might be onto something there, my friend." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they made their way back inside to join the final preparations. The day passed in a blur of last-minute adjustments and growing excitement. Finally, as evening fell, the gala began. The grand ballroom had been transformed into a glittering wonderland, with the children's artwork prominently displayed alongside sophisticated floral arrangements. Guests mingled with staff members, the artificial barriers of status melting away in an atmosphere of genuine warmth and celebration. Midway through the evening, Khalid took to the stage to address the gathered crowd. As he looked out over the sea of faces, employees, guests, industry peers, and media, he felt a surge of emotion. "A year ago," he began, his voice strong and clear, the sapphire star lost its way. "We had forgotten the most fundamental truth of hospitality, that it's not about luxury amenities or exclusive experiences, but about people caring for people." He went on to recount the journey of the past year, crediting the dedication and creativity of the staff for the hotel's remarkable turnaround. As he spoke, he could see tears glistening in many eyes and more than a few proud smiles among his employees. "But this celebration isn't just about looking back," Khalid continued, his voice taking on a note of excitement. "It's about looking forward. What we've created here at the Sapphire Star isn't just a better way to run a hotel, it's a better way to do business. Period." He paused, taking in the expectant hush that had fallen over the room. "That's why I'm thrilled to announce the creation of the Sapphire Foundation. This organization will be dedicated to promoting ethical business practices and employee empowerment across the hospitality industry and beyond." The room erupted in applause. Khalid could see Amira and Carlos beaming from their place near the front, Zain perched on his mother's hip and clapping enthusiastically. "The Foundation's first initiative," Khalid continued once the noise had died down, "will be a mentorship program pairing our staff with employees from other hotels to share the lessons we've learned. Because the true measure of our success isn't just in our profits or our ratings, it's in how we lift others up along with us. As Khalid concluded his speech to thunderous applause, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment mixed with humbling gratitude. The Sapphire Star had indeed been reborn, but more than that, it had become a catalyst for change far beyond its walls. Later that night, as the celebration wound down, Khalid found himself back on the rooftop terrace. Amira joined him, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. "I never thought I'd say this," she said softly, "but I think I'm living my dream, and it's better than anything I could have imagined." Khalid smiled, putting an arm around her shoulders. "We're just getting started, Amira. The best is yet to come." As they stood there, looking out over the twinkling lights of the city, Khalid felt a sense of peace and purpose wash over him. The Sapphire Star was no longer just a hotel. It was a beacon of hope, a model for a new way of doing business that put people first, and with each passing day, its light would shine brighter, touching more lives and inspiring more change. The journey had been long and challenging, but as Khalid looked to the future, he knew that the greatest adventures, for himself, for the Sapphire Star, and for all those whose lives they touched, were still to come. 5 years had passed since the night Khalid al-Rashid first stepped into the Sapphire Star as an undercover janitor. The hotel, once tarnished by mismanagement and corruption, now stood as a shining example of ethical luxury and employee empowerment in the hospitality industry. On a warm spring morning, Khalid stood in the lobby watching as a group of wide-eyed hospitality students were led on a tour by none other than Amira, now the hotel's general manager. Her confidence and expertise were evident as she explained the Sapphire Star's unique approach to business and guest satisfaction. "And remember," Amira was saying, "true luxury isn't about gold-plated faucets or celebrity chefs. It's about creating an environment where both guests and employees feel valued, respected, and cared for." Khalid smiled to himself, remembering how far they had all come. The Sapphire Star had not only regained its 5-star status, but had also become a case study in business schools worldwide. The Sapphire Foundation, launched at that memorable gala 5 years ago, had grown beyond his wildest dreams, partnering with hotels and businesses across the globe to promote ethical practices and employee welfare. As the tour group moved on, Khalid made his way to the hotel's state-of-the-art training center. Inside, he found Carlos leading a workshop for managers from other hotels, sharing the lessons learned during the Sapphire Star's transformation. "The key," Carlos was explaining, "is to view your employees not as resources to be managed, but as partners in your success. When people feel ownership over their work, when they know their voices matter, that's when the magic happens." Khalid lingered for a moment, proud of how Carlos had grown into his role as the hotel's director of operations and a key figure in the Sapphire Foundation's mentorship program. As midday approached, Khalid found himself drawn to the hotel's rooftop garden, now a lush oasis high above the city streets. To his surprise, he found Zain there, now a teenager, tending to the plants with careful attention. "Mr. Al-Rashid," Zain greeted him with a bright smile. "I was just checking on the herbs for tonight's special menu. Chef says the mint from our garden makes all the difference in her famous lamb dish." Khalid felt a surge of pride. Zain had grown into a thoughtful young man, already showing a keen interest in the hotel business. "Your mother tells me you're considering hospitality management for college," Khalid said. Zain nodded enthusiastically. "I want to be part of this, to help spread what you and Mom and everyone here has built. It's not just about running a hotel, it's about changing the way people think about business and community." As they chatted, Khalid marveled at how the seeds planted years ago had blossomed in ways he could never have imagined. The Sapphire Star was more than just a successful hotel. It had become a nurturing ground for the next generation of ethical business leaders. That evening, as the sun began to set, Khalid gathered with Amira, Carlos, and other key members of his team in the very supply closet where they had once huddled to plan their revolution. Now it had been converted into a small, cozy meeting room, preserving the memory of where it all began. "I've asked you here," Khalid began, Because I have an important decision to make and I value your input. He paused, looking around at the faces of those who had become more than colleagues. They were family. I've been offered a position on the United Nations Committee for Ethical Business Practices. It would mean stepping back from day-to-day operations here at the Sapphire Star. The room fell silent for a moment before Amira spoke up. Khalid, think of the impact you could have on a global scale. Everything we've learned here, everything we've built, you could help spread that worldwide. Carlos nodded in agreement. The Sapphire Star is strong. We've all grown so much thanks to you. Maybe it's time to let us fly while you take on this new challenge. As the discussion continued, Khalid felt a mix of emotions: pride in what they had accomplished, excitement for the potential to create change on a larger scale, and a touch of sadness at the thought of stepping back from the daily life of the hotel he loved. Finally, as the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues, Khalid made his decision. I'll accept the position, he said, but on one condition, that we view it as an extension of our mission here. The Sapphire Star will always be the heart of what we do, the living proof that ethical business is not just possible, but profitable and transformative. The team erupted in cheers and hugs, their enthusiasm filling the small room. As they celebrated, Khalid felt a profound sense of coming full circle. He had started this journey alone, disguised and unsure, in the bowels of a troubled hotel. Now he stood surrounded by a family he had never expected to find, poised to take the lessons they had learned together out into the world. Later that night, long after the others had gone home, Khalid found himself once again on the rooftop terrace. As he looked out over the glittering cityscape, he reflected on the incredible journey of the past 5 years. The Sapphire Star had been reborn, not as a monument to luxury, but as a beacon of what was possible when business was conducted with heart, integrity, and a genuine concern for people. It had become a place where dreams were nurtured, where careers flourished, and where the line between employee and guest blurred into a shared experience of warmth and respect. As a soft breeze carried the scent of the rooftop herbs to him, Khalid smiled. He had set out to save his hotel, and had ended up transforming not just a business, but countless lives, including his own. The journey ahead would bring new challenges, but he knew he wouldn't face them alone. The spirit of the Sapphire Star and the family he had found there would always be with him. With a heart full of gratitude and hope, Khalid al-Rashid looked to the horizon, ready to bring the light of the Sapphire Star to the world beyond.